When Kia launched the 4th generation Sorento in 2020, we were seriously impressed by it here at Chasing Cars. It looked better, drove better, and went better than the car it replaced. But there was one problem, and that is that Toyota launched the new generation of Kluger, a slightly larger 3-row SUV, and it came with the option of a hybrid powertrain. But now Kia's back. It's hit back with the option of a series parallel hybrid following the launch of the plug-in hybrid earlier this year. Now there have been some delays. This was supposed to arrive here before Christmas last year in 2021, but it's April 2022 and it's here now. So at least it is here. It packs a hybrid powertrain with a fuel consumption claim of 5.3 litres per 100 Ks, and the price, well, it's $66,780 before on-road costs for this model here, which is the front-wheel drive GT line. It's only available in high-specification GT line trim initially, but hopefully we'll see more variants down the track to bring the cost of entry into the Sorento hybrid a little bit lower. But crucially, this is about 10 grand less than a Toyota Kluger Grande hybrid, and that is a big discount considering that although those two are pretty comparable in terms of spec, I reckon the interior and exterior presentation of the Sorento and the execution of the car as a whole is just that little bit better. But of course, that's what we're going to be checking out in today's review. We're going to be seeing what it's like on the inside, what it's like to drive, and how this thing is to run every day. So of course, stay tuned for that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the hybrid Sorento in the comments section down below. And if you haven't done so already, we'd also love it if you could hit subscribe. Jumping inside, we're presented with the same interior as all the other GT line Sorentos, but that's no bad thing. I think this cabin is really nicely designed. It's very convincing in terms of feeling a little bit special, a little bit luxury, and I really prefer the design, the sharpness, the crispness that this vehicle offers over the Toyota Kluger, which seems a little bit Americana and a little bit more old school, whereas this has a couple of really interesting and quite daring design touches that I think set it apart. Personal favorite is these little scale details here that actually glow with the ambient lighting in this GT line, and I think that gives a real nice lift to this interior. I know it's probably not going to be to everyone's tastes because some of the elements do clash a little bit. These air vents are cool, but maybe you don't love them, and there is a lot of piano black ripe for scratching by kids or wedding rings or whatever. But I think honestly though, the presentation is really well backed up by a quality feeling in here. It all feels really nice and sturdy. The leather on the steering wheel is lovely to hold. These quilted leather seats as well are really nice. Initially they feel a little bit too firm, but when you spend a nice long stint in these, like 3 hours driving, you realize that that firmness is actually not discomfort, but rather support. And so over longer drives, this car remains comfortable. They also have plenty of electric adjustment to get yourself into a nice position. I'm set quite low because I like that, but you can jack this car all the way up. And with the panoramic sunroof, I have really decent headroom in the front seat, and that brings even more light into this cabin. Yes, you can only get it with black leather interior here in Australia, and I know that is a little bit of a shame. The Hyundai Santa Fe does offer more customizability, but this light headliner does bring some reflected light back into the cabin. Now let's talk about the technology suite as well, because we have a really lovely to look at 10.25 inch touchscreen in front of me here, running a very familiar setup. Kia's Android based operating system works really nicely. Wired Apple CarPlay though, not wireless yet. Hopefully we'll soon see that sorted out, because the base models of Hyundai and Kia products do get wireless Apple CarPlay when teamed with the 8-inch touchscreen, but the larger screen doesn't get that. But we've got nice buttons on the side here that work as shortcut buttons, navigation built in, and it has a really neat feature of actually interfacing with the HVAC system to turn on recycling automatically when you go into tunnels, which is great in Sydney because we do have quite a lot of tunnels. We love them. Speaking of the HVAC, super easy to interact with. It's modern, but without being obtrusive. It's not stuck in the touchscreen, and all the buttons that you need are there. You've got recycle right there, auto, different fan speed, 3 auto settings as well. It all just works, and it blows nice and cold. And to add to that, temperature control in this thing is further bolstered by the fact that it has 3-stage heating and cooling for the Nappa leather seats I talked about previously. And on top of that, there's heaps of storage, really clever touches. This flip-up console has a wireless charging pad here in the top-end GT line. You've also got 3 more USB-A ports as well, including one for mirroring and a little bit of extra odds and ends storage. Nice and rubberized too, so stuff doesn't get thrown around. 2 cup holders and a sort of square box behind that, which is the right size for a piccolo cup. And then underneath the center armrest, there's oodles of storage room for whatever you need, and a little movable tray there as well. And door bins that aren't the most generous, but they do stretch wide enough to fit a 1.5 litre plastic water bottle in them. So that's the Kia Sorento GT line's interior, still really well presented, backed up by a nice 10-speaker Bose stereo, and I think perhaps we'd have to do a comparison between this and the Santa Fe, but yeah, I still think the GT line has the best-in-class interior. Here in the second row of the Sorento, things continue to be fairly impressive. Now, it's not quite as long as a Toyota Kluger or as a Hyundai Palisade. Both of those are larger vehicles physically, and so is the Mazda CX-8, but the space on offer is still really competitive considering this is half a size smaller than a lot of the biggest in class. I've still got a decent amount of headroom with this lovely sunroof above me. The grades below this don't have a sunroof, so I have even more headroom. I also know that this is a grade, the GT line, because we've got dual stage heating on each of the outboard seats, which is really nice when you live in a colder climate. Not so great in the height of Sydney summer, but at least it's nice when it gets to winter. And you get the lovely quilted leather back here. Like the front seats, these chairs are pretty firm, but as I found in the front seat, I think over longer periods, that's actually a benefit. It's just the initial sit down where you're like, oh, this thing seems a little bit firm. There are also some great clever touches that there are in all of the Sorentos, including these USB ports in the side of the seats, which is just a really clever little touch to add a little bit more practicality to a car that is already very practical. 12-volt socket down there, another USB-A port, and of course we have our own vents back here, adjustable vents, but we don't have our own climate control zone. I would have loved to have seen that on a range-topping car, but we can't have everything. Up here on the doors, the materials stay nice and soft as well. Lovely design of armrest as well. It feels really nice and sturdy when you need to slam the door shut, that's great. And you also get integrated sun blinds as well, perfect for keeping the sun off an infant's face. And it's great that they come as standard because aftermarket versions of these are usually just pretty shitty. And these ones work nicely, integrate perfectly, and I think it's a great little clever touch that Kia has given this car. Fold down the armrest, nice and sturdy, doesn't flop down onto the bench awkwardly. 2.5 cup holders there in the middle, and I should add the middle seat is not the greatest in class, but it's not too bad. You can fit 3 across the back here pretty well, pretty generous in terms of width, and then you've got this clever little cup holder up here and one more in the door that's good for a 700ml bottle, map pockets, and that about does it for the back seat of the Kia Sorento. The third row of the Sorento isn't as generous as some rivals such as the Kluger or the Hyundai Palisade. Maybe sounding a little bit like a broken record here, but it is bigger than a Skoda Kodiaq, and it is actually pretty reasonable for someone of my height, and it's going to be quite comfortable for someone a little bit shorter than me. 6'2", I've just about got headroom. If I sit up straight, my head does touch the roof, not such a big deal. Legroom, not too bad. It is touching the seat in front of me in a slightly compromised position, but I've actually got really decent toe room, and the visibility back here is fantastic. I'm set slightly higher than the second row, so I don't reckon I'd get car sick on a longer journey, which is great. You've also got ISOFIX tabs here, so you can fit extra baby seats if you need to, or if you want to store kids back here so that you can, I don't know, fold seats. It's sort of quite nice to have. It's also really easy to fold these seats forward. You just press this one button, the backrest slides, and it unlocks the rollers, and then the seats slide out of the way. Pretty easy to do. The only thing is that they haven't reconfigured this car for the Australian market so that the single folding seat is on the left, which means that you can leave the child seat set up on the right and have people get into the third row. Swings and roundabouts as to whether that's better or the configuration the Sorento has is better, but generally that's the way you would go in a right-hand drive market like Australia. But back to the actual third row of this car, you do have really great amenities back here. Cup holder, little spot for your phone. Then you've also got a 12-volt socket, USB-A port on either side, a vent, and you've got a controllable fan speed back here, so you can keep nice and cool or warm depending on the climate that you're in. So yeah, it's pretty well thought out and actually decently spacious for the sort of people and the sort of size that the people are going to be putting them back here on a regular basis. I reckon that's a win. Around the back of the Sorento, and boy, I reckon this car looks best almost from the back. I love these lozengey sort of 50s style taillights and the general design, the spaced out Sorento lettering. Although a lot of other manufacturers are now doing that, I still think it looks pretty crisp. There's no real way of telling this apart from a petrol or a diesel model either, apart from the lack of H-Track all-wheel drive. You just get this little eco hybrid badge there, and yeah, pretty low key. Of course, this is the GT line, so we get a powered tailgate, which beeps a couple of times, but then moves out of the way pretty promptly, nice and high as well, so I can fit under here just about at 6'2", don't bash my head on the thing, which is nice. And in 5-seat mode, we have up to 604 litres of storage space with the rear bench slid quite a way forwards. And then with 7 seats in place, we have 178 litres of storage space, which is a little bit tight, but not too bad if you need to fit school bags and that sort of thing. Under the car, we actually have a full-size spare tire as well, so you don't have to compromise by going for the hybrid and losing the spare tire. Great thing for a big country like Australia where the roads are pretty rough. And yeah, most of the stuff back here is really nicely finished too. You've got electrically folding second row buttons as well, which is great. It means you don't have to reach in there and put your back out doing that. Easy to do. We'd love to see electric folding third row as well, but it's actually not too hard to do with the little pull string. 12-volt socket. The only thing I will criticize it for is having really cheap feeling plasticky tie down points, which I don't think would provide that much support if you needed to carry heavier objects or stop them moving around, but for luggage nets and that sort of thing, it's not going to be a big deal. Finally, we have a little bit more storage under here, though it is mostly taken up by battery gubbins and of course the jack when you need to change the spare wheel. So not too bad. And you even have a button to lock the boot when you want to walk away, or we can just close it like we're going to do now, and it's nice and easy. And yeah, just fits into your everyday life really sweetly, the Sorento. The hybrid Sorento seriously cuts down on petrol use when compared to the V6. For reference, our testing has shown the V6 to get between 10 to 12 litres per 100 kilometres in urban environments, where this car is showing 6.3 litres per 100 Ks in our testing. And I reckon that's pretty great. Of course, the diesel is a little bit more efficient than that 6, but this thing is still more efficient. The official claim is 5.3 litres per 100 Ks, but yeah, as I said, 6.3, not too bad, and really competitive with the Toyota Kluger, if not slightly better. But hopefully we'll be able to do a comparison between those two cars very soon, so let me know if you'd like to see that. On to servicing. Kia hasn't actually finalized service pricing for this hybrid version of the Sorento, though the plug-in hybrid costs about $3,000 to service over 5 years, or $4,500 over 7 years. Now, the service intervals are a little bit shorter for the Sorento, capped to 10,000 kilometers over 12 months, which is a little shorter than a lot of competitors, including the Toyota Kluger, which is 12 months or 15,000 Ks. As for insurance, over the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $1,032 to comprehensively insure their new Kia Sorento. Now, your premium may vary based on things that insurers take into account, such as your age, where you live, your driving history, and whether or not you garage the vehicle. So, the Sorento hybrid out on the road. It's pretty crucial for this car to be successful because a bad hybrid system is something that's really unpleasant to live with every day. There are some examples I can think of off the top of my head. The Subaru Forester's hybrid system, although quite smooth in its operation, doesn't really add anything to the experience of driving that vehicle. Luckily though, the 1.6 turbocharged petrol engine combined with the 40 kilowatt electric motor mounted on the back of this car's 6-speed automatic transmission actually works really well. I don't think it's quite as slick as what Toyota has managed to achieve with its eCVT and many generations of hybrid powertrain that have been around since, I think, 1999 with the Prius, but for a sort of fairly early attempt in the life cycle of the Kia Sorento, I think this is a really good attempt, and it's, yeah, very serene driving out on the road. Just like a Toyota hybrid, it fires up in the morning in electric only mode, so you don't have the sound of the petrol engine to wake you up, and there's sort of a luxury to that. There's a silence and a slickness that brings that I think is really one of the nice things about a hybrid engine vehicle. Now, where it doesn't feel quite as refined in its operation is sometimes at low speeds where the swap over from electric power to petrol power happens. The instance I'm thinking of specifically is the ramp at the chasing car's office. If you crawl up it, it gets 3/4 of the way up on electric power only, nice and smooth, but then the petrol engine kicks in and it sort of fires up and the car actually stops moving forward and rolls back a little bit. And there's some like idiosyncrasies to this hybrid powertrain that I think as generations go on will be ironed out. And honestly, if you're driving this car in normal use, not in that specific scenario, it's actually really good. But it's just, yeah, that specific weird little instance where it doesn't feel quite as well polished as a Toyota hybrid. But still, it's great. And it still gets those great fuel economy numbers that we expect, even from a car that's 1,880 kilograms in its tare mass. Yeah, 6.3 litres per 100 Ks, the ability to carry 7 people, that's really impressive, I reckon. Now, power outputs are 169 kilowatts and 350 newton meters, so pretty decent. I believe the 0 to 100 kilometer an hour claim is 8.8 seconds, so not absolutely world-beating stuff, but still pretty nippy. And when the battery does run out, the 1.49 kilowatt hour lithium polymer battery does run out of juice, this turbocharged 1.6 engine is actually quite a sweet unit, and I think it is a much more refined engine than the RAV4 or the Kluger's slightly thrashy 2.5 litre engines that make quite a lot of noise when you need to rely on them to motivate the car without electric assistance. Now on to the Sorento Hybrid's transmission. It doesn't use a CVT like you'd find in a Toyota Kluger hybrid. Instead it uses a 6-speed automatic gearbox. Pretty conventional stuff and different to the other gearboxes available in the Sorento. The petrol V6 gets an 8-speed auto and the diesel gets an 8-speed dual clutch transmission. This transmission works nicely, though actually this is the one application where I think a CVT might actually be better for a hybrid powertrain, even though I know we're supposed to hate CVTs and this 6-speed does a really good job. I just think a CVT maybe works better when you've got two blended power systems working together, but hey, this is what Kia's decided to do, and as I said, it works quite nicely. Now on to the rest of the Sorento package, which we know already to be very good indeed. The way this car drives is really great. It has a good chassis feel, nice sharp steering response, and a ride that is a little bit firmer than a Toyota Kluger, but I think for the better if you're going to be driving this thing in the country a lot. The body control of the Sorento is fantastic, and as an interesting specification quirk, this hybrid gets 19-inch alloy wheels, whereas the normal GT line gets 20-inch alloy wheels. You'll know if you've watched any of the Chasing Cars reviews of the Sorento range before that the 20-inch alloy wheels on the range topper do add quite a lot of harshness. These 19s seem to just round off the edges of the bumps a little bit better, and it is a very nice and serene car, and crucially there's almost no head toss in this thing when you're driving on a bumpy road, so your passengers will stay nice and calm and hopefully not get road sick, even if you are driving like a bit of a nutter. Moving on to safety as well, this Sorento is really well featured. The adaptive cruise control is very nicely tuned. Lane keep assist as well is pretty decent. It does default to on every time you start the car, which is probably a good thing, but it's really easy to turn off, and crucially the interactions with the safety systems are great because you don't really have to worry about jumping through menus or anything. All of the controls that you need are actually on the steering wheel here, and one of the other really great features of this Sorento, especially in top spec GT line trim with its 12.3-inch digital driver's display, are the blind spot cameras. They're so clever. It's a really nice integration of technology. It's not replacing the mirrors, something that works perfectly well, but it is aiding to the visibility. It shows a little display of a camera readout from the side of the mirror, so you don't have to turn your head all the way to check the blind spot of the car, because it is a fairly big vehicle. Adding to that, the 360 camera and all of the cameras in this vehicle are really crisp, easy to use, and great to see out of. And finally, the noise, vibration, and harshness insulation of this Sorento is only better in hybrid form. You can't really hear any wind noise. It's a very quiet car out on the freeway, and I think these 19-inch alloy wheels also are a little bit more quiet, less road noise, less tire roar than the Conti Sport tires that are fitted to the 20-inch alloy wheels. And that's all really good stuff. So yeah, I think this Sorento hybrid, it may not be quite as well polished in terms of its hybrid powertrain as the best of the best from Toyota, but it's still really good. It cuts down on your fuel usage in your everyday running about, especially in urban environments compared to this car's other options, and it feels really slick, and as does the rest of the Sorento package. So I think the Toyota Kluger really has a bit of a fight on its hands now. Adding a hybrid powertrain to the Sorento really is the icing on the cake for this car, in my opinion, because it's more affordable than the plug-in hybrid this series parallel, but seriously cuts down on fuel costs when compared to the V6 and even compared to the diesel if you're using it in urban environments. And I think that's a big win, considering it only costs about $4,500 more than the petrol or diesel equivalent in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. But of course, that's all up to your own personal use case as to whether it's great value, but I think it's just fantastic that Kia has even chosen to offer this in Australia. Hopefully we'll see them rolling out this hybrid powertrain on more vehicles in the future, including the strong selling Sportage, so it can really take the fight to the Toyota RAV4. But of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on the Kia Sorento hybrid in the comments section down below. And if you haven't done so already, we'd also love it if you could hit subscribe and the bell icon. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.